So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province. More Sunni volunteers are coming forward.
This year, that will end, the fiscal year that will end at the end of this month, the United States is on track to take in about 1,500 Syrian refugees. The president has directed his team to scale up that number next year, and he's informed his team that he would like them to accept make preparations to accept at least 10,000 Syrian refugees in the next fiscal year.
I think the biggest risk that comes from Russia's operations in Syria is an accidental conflict or an accidental skirmish with the U.S.-led ISIS coalition. But accidental conflict or an accidental skirmish with the U.S.-led ISIS coalition is an accidental conflict or an accidental skirmish with the U.S.-led ISIS coalition. Conflict or an accidental skirmish with the U.S.-led ISIS coalition. Accidental skirmish with the U.S.-led ISIS coalition. But
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.
America under attack. The specter of radical Islamic terrorism apparently taking more innocent lives overnight. The latest horrendous mass shooting in Orlando, now the worst in American history.
Let's go. Oh my God, they're all shooting back and forth. Let's go.
Orlando to command, we have shots fired on scene. OPD is requesting you stay back, don't enter the scene.
Gunfire. Position of cover. All personnel. If I can see your face, you're not in a position of cover.
Now we have active firing shots outside. This is OMC. We have the shooter currently inside OMC. We cannot take any more. We're on lockdown.
We are now hearing CBS News is reporting the identity of the man. He is said to be born in 1986, make him 29 or 30, from Port St. Lucie, Florida, which is about an hour and 40 minutes from Orlando. They are saying his name is Omar Mateen. That is what CBS News is reporting this morning.
What I can tell you is the history that we know of this individual so far is that he may have made threats that he was tied to it. There's no definitive determination made at this point. Obviously, we're in the initial stages of the investigation and we're running every lead to ground.
I'm sorry, Agent Hopper, I think your phone went out for 1 sec. Just to be totally clear, he made threats that he had ties to what?
There's allegations that the individual has made threats in the past to having ties to terrorist organizations. However, those have not been confirmed or vetted so far, as obviously we are in the initial stages of this investigation at this time.
So we're getting a little, a little bit more. CBS News is saying that authorities are telling them that they are, quote, leaning towards Islamic terrorism as a motive in this case. And again, they are reporting the man's identity is Omar Mateen. He's in his late 20s, early 30s. He was born to parents from Afghanistan, they're saying.
You know, as I've been saying for many months, we have to get much more serious about the way that we look at potential terrorist activity. You know, if you were having a party at your house and you were inviting 100 people and you had knowledge that one of those 100 people was a terrorist intent on creating havoc, would you still have that party? Or would you say, well, it's just 1 out of 100. That's not so bad. We don't really have to change anything. Well, that's the situation that we're in now. We need to very carefully examine how we're doing things, and the political correctness is beyond the pale. You know, in the Holy Land Foundation trial in Texas, there was an explanatory memorandum that came out, and one of the things it indicated is that in order to accomplish the kind of civilization jihad they wanted, they would depend on America's political correctness to protect them while they were undermining our system.
This is the most significant, deadliest attack on U.S. soil since September the 11th. In San Bernardino, we had Farouk and Malik, 2 jihadi killers who swore their allegiance to ISIS. They killed 14 people. Now it looks as if the jihadists have outdone San Bernardino, and now they're targeting the minority community, the gay community. This is shocking, but it is part of of their strategy. It's part of their MO. We know ISIS executes, throws people off buildings for being homosexuals. This is part of their religious doctrine, their ideology. Now they're bringing it to America. Please note, Maria, 2 weeks ago, America, the federal police and the NYPD arrested the 101st ISIS suspect on U.S. soil in the Bronx. This isn't a hypothetical threat. It is a real one. It is already here. More than 100 people have been killed or arrested on U.S. soil linked to ISIS, and it looks like we've got another one.
So what you're saying is there are members of ISIS already in America waiting for their cues in what people call sleeper cells.
Well, there are people who are linked. There are many ways to be linked to ISIS. Unfortunately, we always want to see the command and control connections. The idea that, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi sitting somewhere in Syria or Iraq is sending out missives and he's sending out orders to the jihadis here. It doesn't have to be that way. It can simply be a sympathetic connection through ideology. The San Bernardino shooters swore allegiance to the new caliph, to the new emperor of Islam, as they saw it, Abu Bakr, and they said, we have to kill infidels. That's all the connection you need. That's why I want people to jettison the concept of lone wolf terrorism. Lone wolf terrorism is a phrase meant to make you stupid. All of these people are connected. They are connected to the ideology of global jihad, and it looks as if it's come home to Orlando as well.
What do you think the U.S. should be doing at this point on a federal level, Dr. Gorka?
On a federal level, Maria, getting rid of the political correctness. In the last 7 years, President Obama, Secretary Clinton, they have betrayed the American people by allowing politics and political correctness into the threat assessment. After San Bernardino, the Attorney General, the most senior law enforcement officer in the United States, said, the most important thing is that we don't have an Islamophobic reaction to San Bernardino. People are dead on the floor of that Christmas party in California. People are in the hospital, and the first thing they think about is political correctness. We're not even allowed to use words like jihad. Hillary Clinton on the campaign trail has said, I will not use the phrase radical Islam. Well, then what is this? What is happening in Orlando? What is happening in Philly, in San Bernardino? It is people who say they are jihadis, who say they're doing it for Allah. It's time to get political correctness out of the threat assessment, Maria.
Today we're dealing with something that we never imagined and is unimaginable. Since the last update, we have gotten better access to the building. We have cleared the building, and it is with great sadness that I share we have not 20 but 50 casualties. In addition to the shooter, there are another 53 that are hospitalized. Because of the scale of the crime, I've asked the governor to declare a state of emergency. We're also issuing a state of emergency for the city of Orlando so that we can bring additional resources to bear.
We're following the breaking news on the mass shooting in Orlando, Florida, that's left 50 people dead and more than 50 people injured. The shooter actually called 911 surrounding the attack to pledge allegiance to ISIS and mentioned the Boston bombers, according to a U.S. official.
ISIS was quick to claim responsibility for today's attack. And while we've learned the shooter may have pledged allegiance to the terror army in a 911 call during the shooting, we're also learning that the FBI had this man on its radar as early as 2013. In fact, they had interviewed him multiple times. He had been in touch with a man alleged to be the first American homicide bomber in Syria. And his own father may have harbored some sympathies with the Taliban as well.
Now, it's the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. 50 people have been killed and at least 53 injured in an attack at a gay nightclub in the U.S. state of Florida. Police killed the gunman, who was identified as Omar Mateen, inside the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. The suspect was a U.S. citizen and son of Afghan immigrants. NBC News reports that Mateen called the emergency services before the attack and swore allegiance to the Islamic State militant group. ISIS later claimed responsibility through its news agency, saying one of its fighters had carried out this awful massacre.
We knew we would learn more throughout the morning, and indeed we have yet again. Fox News Pentagon sources now confirm that Omar Mateen, age 29, the terrorist who killed 49 here late Saturday night, made 2 visits to Saudi Arabia, one in 2011, another in 2012. Bear in mind, we also know in 2013 he was interviewed by the FBI, and also the following year in 2014 thought to have a connection with the first American suicide bomber to blow himself up in eastern Syria and the ongoing war there with ISIS.
You know, Jim Comey months and months and months ago talked about how they have cases on ISIS people in every state of the union. Well over 100 cases, probably closer to 200 cases. You know, and the notion that the FBI or any police agency can keep track of this many people, you know, is folly. And, you know, we need to consider, I think, changing some of the laws of how we have to wait for people to take a massive homicide operation like this before we can actually deal with them.
What do you make of the fact that he had a long gun, a handgun, and this suspicious device, Jim? Obviously, these are key points.
Well, he was prepared to kill a lot of people. I mean, there's nothing new here, you know. And the Saudis, you know, push this Wahhabism. You know, they fund most of the radical clerics in the United States, and most of the mosques and most of the schools. And you know, the notion that people are going to come over here and be part of the big melting pot, you know, is just crazy. I mean, it's not going to happen. They're not going to assimilate. But the government seems not interested at all in knowing who comes into the country. But nevertheless, I mean, they're coming over the border in waves. The INS is releasing, you know, murderers and kidnappers massively. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, we got to put an end to this, but I don't think we're going to be able to change anything for a while.
One of the casualties in all of this is faith in the system, in authorities. And one of the saddest parts of a crisis like this, a terrible news story like this, is all of a sudden you wonder who to believe. Are they telling you the truth? Are the people in charge being honest? Or are they bound by a political agenda that doesn't let them tell you what actually happened?
Yeah, well, also, you know, look at what's going down at our southern border. We have not been serious at all about that. And it's not so much the people from Mexico and Honduras I'm concerned about. It is what they call OTMs, other than Mexicans. That's what the sheriffs will tell you about. There are a lot of those people coming through. They're establishing terrorist cells within our country. Why are they here, and what are they waiting for? We have got to get serious about this, or we're going to destroy ourselves with our silliness.
I spent 8 hours with a Midwest police force, 250 officers, teaching them about jihad, helping them understand Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. After 8 hours of talking to them, a young woman walks up, you know, from the administration, from the Department of Homeland Security, and says, "Look, Dr. Walker, that's all really very interesting, but I disagree with all of it because the primary threat to Americans is white supremacists."
And what's interesting is this incident took place at a gay bar. I think many people on the left need to understand that these radical elements, they hate gay people. They subject women to horrible things. These are people that they need to be looking at very carefully for their own survival. And to just be so ideologically driven that you can't see that, it's problematic.
So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province. More Sunni volunteers are coming forward.
Death is the sentence. I mean, look, there's nothing to be embarrassed about this. That death is the sentence.
Here's a story you won't see anywhere else. A Muslim scholar says killing homosexuals is the compassionate thing to do. And he's just hours away from speaking at an Islamic center right here in Central Florida. Channel 9's Field Sutton's been trying to find out why the group invited him to Sanford.
Off camera, one of the people who is a member here told me that Sheikh Farouk Seskalishfar's speech last night on women's issues was well received and not particularly controversial, but we already know that many people in the Sanford area and around Central Florida are upset about what is coming tonight. Yeah, I'll ask him. Seminole County resident Alan Kornman told Eyewitness News he couldn't believe what a simple Google search turned up about the man speaking at this Islamic center tonight.
It's appalling. In fact, it's inciting violence against gays, and I find that reprehensible.
Dr. Farouk Seskalishfar lives in Iran, according to his online bio, and he's been condemning homosexuals since at least 2013.
Death is the sentence. I mean, look, there's nothing to be embarrassed about this. That death is the sentence.
He admits the Islamic death sentence applies in limited circumstances and is not applicable under U.S. law. But he also says the only way gays and lesbians can be forgiven is to die.
Well, we have to have that compassion for people. With homosexuals, the same. Out of compassion, let's get rid of him now.
I asked Reverend Brian Fullwider of the Interfaith Council of Central Florida what he thinks about Sakalishvar's rhetoric.
These issues around homosexuality and the crying of it or denouncing of it by religion takes away often from our really important tasks of helping our community.
He told me he wishes congregations would focus on helping the poor, the homeless, and the abused instead of persecuting a group that can take care of itself. In Sanford, Field Sutton, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Now, in the past hour, we spoke with one of the leaders from the Husseini Islamic Center, and he says he believes the center has a right to have anyone speak on any topic.
Whether or not it's ISIS, this was completely in keeping with the totalitarian Islamic code called Sharia. The penalty for homosexuality under that law is death. And this is not a theoretical thing. It is enforced. They're throwing gays off buildings. In Iran, they're hanging gay people from cranes. And now they're slaughtering them in nightclubs here in the United States. That's what we're dealing with. And it's not a tiny minority, as President Obama would have you believe. More than half of Muslims worldwide believe that this barbaric code should be the law of the world and that we should all be subject to it. It's horrific.
And you're seeing it throughout West Africa, by the way. This is not an esoteric set of views. This is widely known. They're open about it. I mean, they don't pretend otherwise. So you're saying this is consistent with their beliefs?
Absolutely. This is what the prescribed code says. And even here in the United States, more than half of the Muslims believe that Sharia law should supplant the U.S. Constitution. Now, that doesn't mean all of them believe you should slaughter gays, but it certainly should give people pause to wonder what are the beliefs of people who are not assimilating well to our culture.
These stills, dated March 2015, purport to show a man being thrown from a building. According to the last caption, he was also then stoned to death. His alleged crime, being gay. These images were posted by ISIS in its stronghold of Raqqa. This series as well, from January, show an older man seated in a chair and then tumbling to the ground. Also in January, these from ISIS in Mosul, 2 men murdered in the same manner. In all the photographs, dozens of people are seen watching the killings, seemingly unfazed. Noor, a gay Syrian man, says that makes the atrocious act even more nauseating.
And their facial expressions are really scary because they are not even scared of what's going on. They may be a little bit excited or maybe happy to get rid of homosexuals in the city.
Syria was never a nation that accepted its lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans community. The country's laws criminalize homosexual acts, punishable by up to 3 years in prison. Since the revolution turned war, life for Syria's LGBT community has become even more dire.
It was not ISIS that forced Noor to leave Syria, well before ISIS emerged as a significant force. In 2012, Noor saw this video. This is the only frame that is not too gruesome to show. The video depicts 2 men being beheaded. They're accused of being spies. But then towards the end of the clip, a voice references a verse from the Quran. And Noor says when he heard that, it became one of the main reasons why he decided to leave.
According to the posting, the video was filmed in Idlib, Noor's home province.
There's a very specific verse would say like, only this sin of homosexuality would shake the throne of God. So whenever we hear this on video or on audio, we know exactly that this meant for gay people. It was the moment of clarity, a moment of understanding that this place within is not safe anymore.
Sami and his partner consider themselves already married. They fled after Sami's family found out they were together, and a car tried to run them over. 2 hours later, Sami's phone rang.
There was a man that was thirsty, saying, "This time you could have made it and you survived, but the next time you will not."
In Istanbul, the couple lives in shared housing with other Syrian men. When the ISIS photos emerged, one of their Syrian housemates made a sickening comment.
He made a very absurd joke about he was so amused and he has so much fun watching homosexual, and he say now gay men can fly.
Fear of persecution continues to haunt them here.
In the wake of the deadliest mass murder on American soil by shooting, President Obama is still refusing to blame radical Islam.
We know enough to say that this was an act of terror and an act of hate. We are still learning all the facts. This is an open investigation. We've reached no definitive judgment on the precise motivations of the killer. The FBI is appropriately investigating this as an act of terrorism, and I've directed that we must spare no effort to determine what, if any, inspiration or association this killer may have had with terrorist groups.
When I watched what the president said yesterday, I mean, it made me want to cry. This is such deliberate falsehood. He spoke after the FBI said this related to terror. He spoke after we knew that the man had said Allahu Akbar while shooting people. He spoke after we knew the man had called into 911 to say he was pledging allegiance to ISIS. And with all of that factual data, the President of the United States could not bring himself to tell the truth to the American people.
Yeah, but he hasn't called it a radical Islam in 7 years. Why would he break that habit now? Newt, listen, here's Donald Trump talking about how the president refuses to say radical Islam.
Our politicians are so inept and so incapable, and our leadership, especially at the top, is just, they don't know what they're doing. And we're allowing people to come into our country that are no different than this maniac, which I don't know how many people are going to end up dying from this, but no different than this maniac that just did this to us yesterday. You know, people can't believe it. People cannot they cannot believe that President Obama is acting the way he acts and can't even mention the words radical Islamic terrorism. There's something going on. It's inconceivable.
At some point, we have to face the realities that we are at war with ISIS and with all of Islamism. The fact that these attacks continue, and it doesn't matter whether they use guns or pipe bombs, the attack comes from the same source, and they want to kill us. I was glad to see Bill Nelson say it's time to declare war against ISIS. I'm here in Tel Aviv. Last week, 4 people were murdered by the same ideology. The Israelis are used to it, and I don't want America ever to get used to this. I don't want us to accept this. I don't ever want us to be able to say that it's just part of the way that our world is. Well, let's stop it, but you can't stop it by trying to have a conversation. You have to kill the people who are just absolutely intent on murdering innocents. And these people, there's no negotiation. There's nothing to negotiate. They want to destroy our culture, our civilization. And when people are out to destroy civilization itself, you have to eradicate the cancer, and that's what it is. It's a cancer. Living with a little bit of cancer is not an option. We have to get rid of it.
How do you get into the minds of these radical Islamic individuals that believe their God is teaching them to kill in order to get a better position in heaven?
Well, that's what makes this so complicated, because if a person is killing people because they have this delusion that their God wants them to do it, you can't negotiate. If a person wants a piece of real estate or they want a bigger piece of the pie when it comes to power, there's give and take. But when they believe that their goal is to take us back to the 7th century and kill everybody who doesn't want to go with them, then there's nothing to negotiate. There is nothing to be reasoned with. And I think that's why there is a naivete among this administration's people. They just don't want to accept that, and they want to be so politically correct and not to offend anybody. Well, I'm tired of Americans being murdered. That's a bigger offense to me than hurting somebody's feelings. If we have to hurt some feelings, fine. But more importantly, if we have to kill some terrorists and kill some radicals, then that's what we have to do to make this world safer and stop this nonsense.
No kidding.